Conor McGregor has come out and he said, got the ball rolling, got my paperwork done, submitted it to Jeff Novitzky. Now, Novitzky is the liaison for the Ultimate Fighting Championship and the United States Anti-Doping Agency. I trust that you know that, but I'm going to condescend just so you understand why Conor said Novitzky and why it's relevant that he said Jeff Novitzky. And it is relevant. USADA has a policy, and it's very open. They've advertised it. They've done it a number of times. We won't speak. Whatever we have going with you is going to be between you and us, unless you speak. If you speak incorrectly, we will come out and correct it. Now, that's a topic for a whole other day. I don't think that that's something they should do, but that topic really doesn't matter, whether they should or they should not. It's important that you understand that that's the rule, because Conor did not say the United States Anti-Doping Agency. He said he turned the paperwork into Jeff Novitzky. Now, insiders like me is going to know exactly what he meant. Exactly what he's attempting to imply. And I share that with you because in a normal situation where Conor McGregor is known to troll us and like to have a lot of fun with us, he would not bring in a name like Jeff Novitzky. But if he was desperate to get the troll over, he could invoke Jeff Novitzky, because Jeff won't say anything. Jeff can, but Jeff is very unlikely to say anything. So the point is, Conor didn't say USADA. So if this was a work, this is a work and a hustle by Conor, and he put this out in a tweet, the work and the hustle would only hold up until tomorrow morning. By then, USADA would put out a statement saying, we have not received paperwork from Conor McGregor, or we have received paperwork, and they would need to. And it's not to bust Conor in a lie, it's in case a mistake was made. Particularly in today's internet digital world. If Conor comes out and says, I've submitted this, and he sincerely believes he has, and USADA looks around and says, well, we didn't get it, they kind of need to speak up. And they need to alert and let him know that, no, you're not in the pool, right? So it's just one of these spots. It was interesting that he said Novitzky instead of USADA. I'm digging into something, right? I'm digging into a tweet and going in kind of a weird direction. But you have to. You get tweets from some of these great trolls like Conor. When you get tweets from these guys, it's like a murder investigation. The detective work that you have to use, that you have to go through to start to look into some of these things. This is much more of a typical situation where Conor's management would have spoken up, or the UFC would have spoken up, or Conor would have quietly entered the pool. Conor has a back and forth ongoing fight with USADA. It's one of my favorite fights. I didn't hope and cheer on my knees to Lord in heaven above for any fight of 2023 more than I did McGregor versus USADA. And it is not McGregor's style to back down. Now, if the writing's on the wall and the UFC says this is never going to get tested because we're never going to go to the next step, we're just going to do what USADA asks for. But if they told Conor that, he goes, okay, great. I lost. Fine. Let's go in the pool. I could see that. I could see that, and I could understand that. I'm just not convinced that Conor's done with him. I'm not convinced McGregor is done tormenting the United States Anti-Doping Agency. I'm not convinced he's done tormenting the fans. I'm not convinced he's done tormenting Michael Chandler. It's one of these really interesting situations where it is a very wild claim to make, right? Conor can only... I never like to use the word lie. I never like to word... Because when a guy's working, right? And you guys hear this all over the world, that you've got misinformation. You hear this word. I was in the 4th grade. Mr. Bailey took our entire class to the library at Wilsonville Elementary School. And the librarian explained to us that there's 2 kinds of stories, fiction and nonfiction. She didn't tell us there's a version of stories called information and misinformation. I mean, I'm just sharing that with you. So I don't think a guy's lying when a guy's a storyteller and he comes out and he tells a story. I don't think he's lying. And if you want to say that you think that Twitter and or X should be absolute truth, if you want to say that, go ahead, but nobody else said that. That was never set up within the rules. I don't think a guy's lying. That is my point. I think a guy is performing. He's entertaining. He's working. He's telling a story. That's what I think. And it's relevant that you understand that, because I'm wording it very nice. If somebody did call it a lie, I'm a little bit stuck. If you go look up the definition of lie, right? I'm a little bit stuck whether I want to call it something else or not. When you do that, when that is the game that you're going to play, it is a formula. It is a formula of how many truths and the lie can I tell without pissing people off. Because entertaining them is fine. The great authors that make the most money didn't do it in nonfiction, right? So, what I'm sharing with you, Conor needs us. He needs me. He needs the me's of the world, and he needs you to listen when he tells these things. But if he keeps giving us misinformation, at some point we're going to quit discussing it because we're going to get pissed off. I don't know that we're at this point right now, but this would be a real surprise to say I've done my paperwork and I'm in USADA. There's not a benefit to that. It would be an admittance that the fight of McGregor versus USADA is over and they won, which is fine, right? I mean, this isn't a big deal. This is just the one that Chael was going to enjoy. It would also indicate the fight with Chandler is on. And the reason I say that, if you want to starve Chandler out, you're going to need a little bit more time. He's very resilient and he's very patient. He's more patient than I thought that he would be. So if you re-enter USADA and you're saying that I can be back in 6 months, which lines up pretty nicely with around UFC 300, you start to understand that it's going to be Chandler. If you starve Chandler out a little bit more, he might go take a fight, and all of a sudden you go and you try to get into business with Nate Diaz. I mean, look, one thing about the McGregor Chandler situation, I got to call it a situation. I can't call it a fight. They're not fighting. I know there was fight announcements, but you don't have a fight until you have a bout agreement. And apparently bout agreements weren't even issued. And bout agreements weren't even issued, not just because of USADA. There was never a venue. There was never it on sale. There was never a date. And when I heard about this fight for the very first time, one reporter called the promoter, called the A side, called the B side, right? The promoter, red corner and blue corner. One reporter called all three, but he didn't call them at the same time. So when they each got the call, they didn't know that the other principals in this were going to get the call. And the reporter asked them one thing: what weight class are you guys fighting at? He got 3 different answers. And as soon as I heard, and this was on day 1, guys, the day that this was announced, that they're going to fight in the Ultimate Fighter, this whole thing, the day that was announced, a reporter went to find out what weight class. He asked 3 people. He got 3 different answers. And that was the day that I knew we don't have a fight. Now, that doesn't mean at all that we can't get one, right? Everything's got to start somewhere. I'm just sharing for you, the day that this was announced, when the world thought it was going to happen, I remember looking at my partner, Ryan. I remember right where we were. We were in the back of an Uber, headed to the forum for Fedor versus Bader Part 2. I said, man, if you don't have a weight class, you don't have a fight. And here we are. Here we are, 8 months later, but we don't have a fight.